everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? Grab your coffee, maybe a snack, and let's get into it, okay? So, if there is one thing that history has taught us, is that we don't learn a darn thing and we haven't learned from our mistakes, right? It would seem plausible that even one occasion that brought the world to like the brink of global thermonuclear war would have been enough to make us seriously rethink our nuclear arsenals. In an actual fact, close call nuclear events seem to have increased our determination to make a nuclear Armageddon inevitable. Okay? Now, what is stunning are the circumstances and events that have brought us to the brink. It's easy to assume that a nuclear confrontation would be the result of a reckless rogue nation or the mindless behavior of a corrupt dictator. Those are possibilities, but the actual events that have slowly come to light are alarming, if not terrifying. And there are facts, there's dates, there's incidents that just seem to happen over and over and over again. Okay? Now, there's actually 13 different times. Yeah, 13 different times that we barely avoided a nuclear Armageddon. 13. And the first time was October 5th, 1960. The United States had implemented a broad line of early warning systems during the 1950s. They were designed to detect a first strike from the Soviet Union and stretched across the top of North America into Greenland. And it was in Thule, Thule, Greenland, that the early warning system detected a dozen missiles inbound from the Soviet Union, estimated to strike the continental U.S. in 20 minutes. Now, panic followed through, obviously, okay? And it was immediately. And NORAD, all right, went to its highest alert and prepared to retaliate. And then someone at NORAD remembered that the Soviet premier, which was Nikita Khrushchev, was in New York at that time. And it seemed implausible that the Soviets would strike while their premier was in the United States. And further investigation revealed that the advanced early warning system had mistaken, listen to this, the rising moon over Norway as the incoming Soviet missiles. Yeah. So the next one happened on November 24th, 1961. The Thule, which is that Thule, okay, the early warning system in Greenland, all right, that was once again at the center of this event. It was the Strategic Air Command had lost contact with the Thule station, and they frantically tried to contact NORAD, but communications to both NORAD and the radar station at Thule were both shut down. And the assumption was that sabotage was behind the loss of the communication, and the entire SAC fleet of nuclear-armed B-52s was ordered to prepare for takeoff. But fortunately, a pilot on a U.S. bomber was able to make contact with Thule, and he confirmed with them that no attack was underway. A later investigation revealed that a single malfunctioning switch shut down all communications between SAC, NORAD, and Thule. So the next one is October 25th, 1962. It was the Cuban Missile Crisis, Okay, it may have created the largest number of near nuclear events in the shortest period of time. The first occurred shortly after the Cuban crisis had emerged and the U.S. had elevated their alert status to DEFCON 3, which is only 2 steps away from total war. All right. And the event was triggered by a guard at a military base in Duluth, Minnesota. He saw a figure trying to climb the security fence around the perimeter late at night and shot at the intruder while sounding the sabotage alarm. The result in air raid alarms to go off at all bases in the area. And commanders at Volk, VOLK field in Wisconsin panicked and in the midst of an alert status at DEFCON 3 ordered nuclear-armed F-106A interceptors to prepare for takeoff. And quickly, the event was determined to be a false alarm, but an officer had to literally race a truck down the runway in front of the jets to stop them from taking off. It was later determined that the intruding saboteur in Duluth was a bear trying to climb the fence. Okay. Now, the next one happened on October 27th, 1962. And the second close call of the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred in the air. And the U.S. had created a blockade around Cuba and was continuing surveillance of the island using U-2 spy planes. U-2, like the group, the music group U-2. Okay. On the morning of the 27th, a U-2 was shot down by Soviet troops stationed in Cuba, and it killed the pilot. It heightened tensions to a fever pitch with a direct attack, an act of war, and then the third close call happened, which was October 27th of 1962. The third close call of the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred at sea. The destroyer, the USS Beale, B-E-A-L-E, detected a Soviet submarine, the B-59, and determined it was trying to break the blockade. In an effort to make the submarine surface or change course, the Beale dropped practice depth charges, assuming that the Soviets would recognize them as dummy weapons, but they didn't. And the captain of the B-59, Valentin Savitsky, ordered a torpedo attack against the Beale with nuclear-tipped torpedoes. And the Soviet Navy protocol held that all 3 senior officers on a Soviet submarine, plus the captain, had to agree to a nuclear attack. And one officer, Vasily Arkhipov, disagreed with the captain and the other 2 senior officers and convinced the captain to surface and contact Moscow. They reversed course once on the surface, and the events were not revealed until 30 years later. Yeah. Now, still October 27th, 1962. It's like this time frame right here was, crazy, right? The fourth near-nuclear event of the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred over Serbia. An Air Force U-2 spy plane drifted off a course over the Bering Sea, crossed into the Soviet airspace, all right? And the pilot, he got confused by the Aurora Borealis and lost track of his location, spending 90 minutes over Serbia. And the Soviet Air Force scrambled 6 MiGs fighters to shoot down the U-2. After losing 1 U-2 over Cuba, the Strategic Air Command scrambled a squadron of F-102 Delta Daggers and armed them with nuclear Falcon air-to-air missiles in response. But fortunately, the MiGs and the Delta Daggers never encountered each other, and the U-2 was safely escorted back to Alaska. Now, next day, October 28th, 1962. This is the fifth event of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it happened a little before 9 a.m. in the morning when radar operators in Morristown, New Jersey. Okay, I know where Morristown is. Morristown, New Jersey. My grandfather used to have a horse farm there. They reported to NORAD that Soviet nuclear missiles from Cuba were headed towards the United States, with the first strike expected to be at 9:02 in the morning, right outside of where? Tampa. Yeah. And as NORAD scrambled for a response, the time came and went without detonation. It's like, what the heck, you know? And a later investigation revealed that the Morristown radar operators were confused because the radar facility was running a test tape of a simulated missile launch from Cuba when a satellite happened to appear on the horizon. I know. So now we're going to May 23rd, 1967. The U.S. Air Force began preparing for war on May 23rd, 1967, because they thought that the Soviet Union had jammed a set of American surveillance radars. But military space weather forecasters intervened just in time, telling top officials that a powerful sun interruption was to blame. Yeah, it's the truth. Now, the next one is November 9th, 1979. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and computers at NORAD began flashing, warning, 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 right? Thousands of nuclear missiles were being launched by Soviet submarines towards the U.S. continental. SAC was alerted. Missile crews went on alert. Nuclear bombers were taxiing for takeoff. And then National Security Advisor was alerted, but chose not to wake up Jimmy Carter, who was president at the time, in order to verify the threat. It was a false alarm, of course, and it was later determined that a technician had inadvertently inserted a training tape into one of the computers simulating a massive nuclear attack from Soviet submarines. How stupid. But it's true. So the next one happened on September 26, 1983. And it's not just about us, all right? The Russians, they also had their share of false alarms too. Just after midnight on September 26, 1983, Soviet satellite operators, they detected a launch of a U.S. Minuteman nuclear missile. But soon after, 4 more missiles were also detected, and the Soviet response was to be an all-out retaliatory strike. But it didn't happen. The bunker commander decided not to inform his superiors because he couldn't believe that the U.S. would launch a preemptive nuclear strike with only 5 missiles. After 20 minutes, the false alarm was confirmed, and a Soviet satellite had mistaken sunlight reflecting off the top of clouds as U.S. missiles. How stupid. But it's true. Now, the next one happened on November 7th of 1983. It was a NATO exercise code named Able Archer 83, which was held across Western Europe from November 7th to the 11th of 1983. It was referred to as a routine, but had many components that alarmed the Soviet Union. It was a 170 flight radio silent lift of 19,000 U.S. soldiers to Europe. The shifting of commands from permanent war headquarters to the alternate war headquarters. The practice of new nuclear weapons release procedures, including consultations with cells in Washington and London. And then it was the sensitive political issue of numerous slips of the tongue, in which B-52 sorties were referred to as nuclear strikes. So the primary concern in the Soviet Union was that the Able Archer exercise was a cover for launching a real attack. But the Soviet Union went on heightened nuclear alert, and it continued into 1984, when it became apparent that no attack was imminent. Nothing was coming. Yeah. So then the next one was January 25th, 1995. Okay. The Soviet Union had dissolved, and Boris Yeltsin was the first president of the Russian Federation. And on January 25th, 1995, a Russian early warning radar station detected the launch of a U.S. Trident missile from what appeared to be a submarine launched off the coast of Norway. Now, Yeltsin was actually given the launch codes for a retaliatory strike, but he believed it was a false alarm. It was, thank God, but it was a Norwegian scientific rocket on a mission to study the aurora borealis, and it was mistaken for a trident, even though the Kremlin had been warned of the launch. So, unfortunately, no one at the Kremlin thought to notify the radar operators of the launch, which, how stupid, but it's true. So, the last one happened on January 13th, 2018. An emergency alert comes through. Okay, it says emergency alert, ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. You remember that? I remember that. Okay. I got it on my cell phone, I think it was. And it was an early morning emergency alert, mistakenly warning of an incoming ballistic missile attack. It was dispatched to cell phones across Hawaii. I actually got it too. And I was just like, what the hell is this? You know? And it set off widespread panic in that state. And that was already on edge because of escalating tensions between the United States and North Korea, right? And the alert sent by the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency was revoked 38 minutes after it was issued. And it was prompting confusion over why it was even released and why did it take so long to rescind it and everything else. And the governor said, what happened today was totally unacceptable. You think? He said, many in our community were deeply affected by this, and I'm sorry for that pain and confusion that anyone might have experienced. Oh, gee whiz, man, thanks. Now, officials said that the alert was the result of human error and not the work of hackers or foreign government, and the mistake occurred during a shift change drill that takes place 3 times a day at the emergency command post. According to Richard Raposa, who is a spokesman for the agency, he said someone clicked the wrong thing on the computer. How absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. No kidding. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I love you. I'll see you in the next one, okay? You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping. And as always, fearless. Ciao.